Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. We're going to begin shortly. I'm just giving one more minute to see if Representative Walker logs in. If not, we'll start.
Thank you.
Work session. So just bear with us for 1 second, please.
Representative Lair, I believe she's tied up in an insurance meeting.
Insurance meeting. Okay, perfect. So let's begin. Welcome and thank you. Thank you for coming before us again. I'm just going to, Christine, just leave it up to you so that you can present and address some of the questions that were posed in the last meeting. So we begin there, and members, we after the presentation, then I'll let everyone ask questions if that's okay with everybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we did provide some written documentation to the committee answering the questions. I don't know whether that's been, we filed it yesterday afternoon. I don't know if that's been provided to everyone. We had been asked to give our current caseloads and an explanation on how staffing would impact our ability to effectively process cases and whether that would in turn increase costs to DOC and Judicial. So we did provide chart A that indicates what the current caseloads are. They are running, I would say, as we had indicated in our testimony, still about 18% below what they were last year. We are seeing that tick up every month. There are more cases being docketed in court. We're not back to full operations yet, but they are moving in that direction. So we do expect that gap to close somewhat as we move forward. We still have not, jury trials are continuing to back up. So, not only do we have the backlog of people who were scheduled for jury trials when the pandemic started, we now have a number of people who have been added to the system, in other cases where we've been able to at least discuss them that have moved on to the jury docket. So we are expecting a surge of jury trials to start, whether that's in May or, later in the summer and the fall, which I think is probably more likely. We are going to see that. So it's going to be critical that we have enough staff in our offices to not only deal with the surge of sort of regular non-trial cases that are coming in, but also to do the trials. I mean, a trial is a situation that'll take an attorney and some of the staff out of the office for a week or two in order to address the trial. And as I've said a few times, we've already started to see the surge in retirements. One of the other charts in the document I provided shows what we're looking to potentially lose: 55 people, a number of office heads. And these are our experienced people. These are the folks that can, pick up a trial file and get it ready in a couple of days and try it by themselves. We've worked really hard to get our staff ready to try cases, as I've indicated to this committee before. With the deputy chief, we instituted this in-house program where we were taking our cases that would have normally gone out and we would have paid an assigned counsel to do it. And we're moving them around, putting them and giving them to lawyers from different offices to eliminate the conflict or to deal with capacity limits. And that's been getting people more trial experience, but there's been no trials for the past year, so that got delayed. So, the current appropriation that we have does give us the ability to fill some of those gaps. We had been asked about anticipated retirement. Chart B talks about that. We had indicated we have 91 people, or 23% of our workforce, eligible to retire. Just this month, 7 attorneys, including 3 office heads. We were asked to provide our income eligibility guidelines. Those are also attached as chart C. And as I've been asked at the original hearing, those guidelines are 200% of the poverty rate, and there are some spend downs also. So as you can see, dependents will add an amount, and there is an ability for an office head to look at other things, significant medical bills, things like that, could help to make somebody eligible for public defender services. We were asked to provide a breakdown of our staff by race and gender. We currently have 397 filled positions, and the gender and race breakdown is provided in chart D, I'm sorry. We were asked to give a list of what joint trainings we had managed to do with other state partners. That's listed in chart E. That includes opening up a few of our trainings on racial justice and our poverty simulation to DCJ and to the Attorney Generals. A few years ago, there was a joint program with criminal justice on eyewitness identification. We participate with the judicial branch to co-run guardian ad litem certification, and judicial, these are not ours, but judicial opens up some of their trainings to us, including the Chief Justice generally provides a racial justice program that he puts on with Justice Khan, and the branch runs a really robust diversity week program that they will open up to our staff when there's room, and there's usually room. They're quite generous with that. The last thing we had been asked to provide, as we indicated at our original hearing, the one thing that was not allocated in the governor's budget recommendation was an increase to our assigned counsel rates that we had asked for. And we've been asking for this for a while. Members that have been on this committee have seen us ask to raise those rates as high as $500 a case. It was suggested to us that we reduce the ask. So the ask was to bring it up to from $350 to $400. As you can see, those rates haven't been increased since 2008. And so I've provided for the committee in Chart F a history of our rates. And I have been asked to give a comparison of neighboring states, and that is there as well. I will say it was a little difficult to get rates from neighboring states. People protect that information. A few friendly chief public defenders provided me with some of the information. But I think it's interesting to see, I got misdemeanor rates from a number of states, and those were either the same or higher than what we're even paying for some of the felony cases. So we understand that as a big ticket item, and that's why it's been difficult to get that funded. It is becoming a bit of an issue for us. As I said, none of the rates have increased since 2008. We have more lawyers who will decline to take serious cases because of the pay rates. And we have this year seen an increase in the number of people who are not renewing their contracts. So I can't say that it's a crisis at this point, but it's definitely something that's looming out there that we're concerned about. These people do work hard. These are difficult cases. Even the auditor commented on how low the rates were. So that is in there because the committee was interested in it at our initial hearing. And it is certainly something that I think will need to be pursued at some point to figure out a way to get some more money to our contractors. So those are the questions. As I said, the material is there, and I'm happy to answer questions. I don't want to take up too much of the time with me talking. I want to respond to the questions that the committee has. And I have a number of members of my staff here. So if there's anything I can't answer, I am sure we can provide you with what you need either right now or be able to get it for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Questions from the committee members? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Attorney Rapillo. Thanks for being here. Do you roughly know the number of, first of all, let me say that the office that your work does is so important to our state.
Thank you.
You know, it's an interesting thing, you know, real briefly, you know, being a police officer for as long as I have, people have this understanding that the police and the public defender's office are these adversaries that's just not true. There's a public defender, and now she's up in Danielson, Dawn Bradnini, who, you know, was an adjunct professor, and I used to go into some of her classes at Middlesex, and it blew their minds. Like, you guys get along? It's like, yeah, we're gonna do this together, you know. But just briefly, do you know what percentage of the docket the public defender's office handles, and on a statewide level?
So on a statewide level, it's around 65%. It's more in criminal court, it's more in Part A, but the average is about 65%.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Representative Nolan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. And I just want to also mimic what Representative Howard said in appreciation of the work that you guys are doing in this COVID time. So we want to make sure that you understand that we appreciate your work and how hard you do that.
Thank you very much.
In regards to trials, I know you said that trials are going to be starting up, but has there been any virtual trials? Is that something that's going on? And if so, is there a cost that was put together for that?
So there have not been any virtual trials done in criminal court. I mean, we've got concerns about virtual criminal trials. An accused has the right to be physically present. There's lots of pitfalls, I think, that would come to try to do a jury trial in a criminal case, probably similar pitfalls in civil cases. I don't believe there have been jury trials of any sort in Connecticut. Juror reporting has been suspended through the end of April. So there have been some hearings that have been held. So there have been some violation of probation hearings that people have managed to do. But there's been no jury trials.
Okay. And in regards to staffing, and you said you're low on staffing, and then there's a lot of retirements coming up. Have you expedited any processes in order to close that gap a little bit different than you have in the past?
So what we've really tried to do since the budget crisis that we had a few years ago is to try to focus our resources on the public facing pieces. So when we can make a cut in administration, that's what we do. We had at one point had somebody that was in charge of research and data. It was a high paid position. That person unexpectedly left the agency, and we reallocated all of that. Most of it was forward facing, and then we're using some of it in order to hire somebody to help us with our diversity and inclusion efforts. So as people have left, we've really tried to get the staffing out of the chief's office and out of the administration and out into the field. So what we're doing as people are retiring is, what we're seeing is we have office heads leave, and then we'll have 3 other people in an office go. Middletown is a good example. Our commission just appointed a new public defender for Middletown, and there's 2 other people in the office leaving. So what we've done is we try to post things as soon as we can so that when the new office head comes on board, they are sort of day one, have a pile of resumes in front of them, and we start to be able to fill people. It's good to be able to do that because our budget has been fairly stable and we try to be careful with the money. We haven't needed to delay filling the positions to try to save money. We've delayed in some instances because of COVID. In a couple of cases, it didn't make sense to bring additional people into an office when, we really couldn't physically get the bodies in there. It's hard to bring new people on board and onboard them when they can't go into the office. So we're now able to start to do that, and we've begun that process.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to let other people go. I got a couple more questions, but I'm going to let other people ask questions first. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee members? So I'll ask a couple of questions that I have. I don't have the materials that you submitted in front of me. I was just checking my email. I couldn't find it. So in regards to the comparison for the increase in the council rates, what was it? How much were our neighboring states paying? What was the rate that they were utilizing?
So the federal court nationwide pays $148 an hour in non-capital cases. So federal court is really, I think, equivalent for the most part to our Part A cases. Those tend to be the more involved, more serious cases. So that's significantly higher than what we're paying. Most places are paying over $50 an hour. Maine is $60 an hour for every case. There are some caps that apply. Massachusetts pays $55 an hour for misdemeanors and $68 for felonies. That's a strange number. I don't know how they came up with that, but that is the rate that I got from their chief. New Hampshire pays $50 an hour, but their rate for GA, what would be the equivalent to our GA and delinquency cases, is $450 flat. New York pays $50 an hour for misdemeanors. And I wasn't able to find their felony amount. I understand it's 65. But I can't confirm that. And Vermont and Rhode Island are both paying $50 an hour. These are for misdemeanors with caps of $1,500. And those are cases where in Connecticut, you'd be paid a flat rate of $350 and only be eligible for any type of hourly billing if you went to trial. And I'll be very few of those types of cases go to trial. It happens. For the most part, the folks taking our GA cases, which is the bulk of the business. I mean, I would say that, and the juvenile cases account good 2/3 of what we do, are getting $350 flat to do all the work in the case.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking actually at the budget right now, and the assigned counsel, your agency requests an additional $1 million. The governor's recommendation, that was reduced. That additional request, does that cover the rate? Is that the rationale behind that?
Yes, and actually I thought, if you could just give me a second to, in my original testimony, what we would need to move the rates from $350 to $400 a case is $384,000.
384. Okay,
84, that would give us a start. So if that was something,
4,000.
if you were asking me to make an ask today, that would be what we would need in order to make this minimal increase from 350 to 400 a case. And that would be significant. I mean, minimal is not the right word. That would be significant to the folks that do the work for us.
Okay, so it's $384,000.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I think that's important. And you're being modest. I thought you were gonna have a higher ask than that. So
I could certainly if there was some ability to raise those hourly rates, that would be good. Those are the work that's done in the more serious cases, but the 384 is what we have been looking for. And as I said, it would be a good start.
So you mentioned that you're gonna start trials pretty soon, hopefully in, what is it, summer or fall?
We're hoping. I mean, they're saying maybe May. That may be a little optimistic.
So what's has happened with the department during this time, during the pandemic?
So courts have stayed open. So our staff has been working the entire time. As I think people know, the court system consolidated. At one point, we were down to only 6 open buildings. And so what we did, they were combined. You would have jurisdictions all combined feeding into one. And so staff would rotate in and out. We did it in cohorts. We had a few situations where people got sick and we were able to seamlessly jump another cohort in and keep everybody safe. So they've really, I mean, and now you've got buildings open in every judicial district. I think there's still 7 physical buildings that are closed. So we have some offices that are still combined. But they're going in every day. They're continuing to do jail visits when DOC is open for people to be able to do it. I have to give a shout out to our partners at Judicial and the prosecutor's office. I think we've all worked really hard to try to get people out when it was safe and appropriate to do that. Judicial provides us with lists. The chief state's attorney and I send the lists out and our staff goes to work trying to reach agreements, but having arguments when that's necessary. I mean, you can't roll over. We're the adversarial system, and that's continued. Much of the work at this point is being done remotely. Our staff go into court when they need to. We have had to upgrade our technology, so we provided a big increase in cell phones. Our clients, our incarcerated clients and our clients who were out had a hard time reaching us when buildings were closed and people were not at work all the time. So definitely increased the cell phone coverage, provided tablets for people to be able to safely talk to one another even when they're in court. So we keep the tablets. It would be handed to a client and the client would be able to privately talk to an attorney without having to have face-to-face contact. That was really important at the height of the pandemic in order to keep things going. So again, no trials, but we've been preparing and you're trying to get ready, trying to do what we can to get ready so that when they do start, we are set to go and our clients can be well serviced.
Perfect. In preparation for that, in regards to vaccinations and the staff, are there any efforts in that area to ensure that your staff get vaccinated? Those that choose to get vaccinated, what are you doing around that and preparing for, to protect the staffs and all that?
So originally, Ms. Fitzpatrick, our HR director, worked extremely hard to make sure that we were included in the 1B essential employee list. When it went to age, I mean, obviously there's not much we can do. Our HR department, though, almost daily is sending out updates to people about how to get vaccinated, how to, we get tips in from our staff and Ms. Fitzpatrick sends that out. I mean, there are almost daily things going out to people about there's openings here, here's how you can get onto CVS. Detailed instructions about how to register with VAM. So that will continue ongoing as more cohorts are added to the governor's list of people who are eligible. And we're trying to keep track of who's been vaccinated.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Nolan.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. And I'm so happy that you talked about tablets for clients for attorney privileges, because that was a couple questions that I did actually get from constituents in regards to how are they able to have private discussions without anybody else listening. And I'm glad to hear that you said that, because that was a concern that I will get back to them on, saying that availability is there. Now, as far as the cell phone technology, is that for your staff or is that for the clients also?
So the staff was provided with additional cell phones, the cell phone number, each office, so the investigators all have them, and then each office was given an office cell phone. Those numbers are posted on our website so that people would be able to have the additional number. If there's folks that are having trouble reaching their attorneys, people should reach directly out to me and I'll make sure they get back. It's been a challenge, particularly a challenge with incarcerated folks. There's not much bandwidth at corrections to have even telephone conversations with people. And the deputy chief has been spearheading an effort for us to provide corrections with tablets for the clients to be able to more opportunities for video. Their bandwidth isn't very good. And I think they're still working on upgrading what they can do within the system. They're focusing on court hearings first. So we're hoping to be able to do that, to provide them with the physical tablet so that the counselor could let the client talk to people. But it is a challenge for people to reach folks. There's no question.
Yeah, that's what some of us are hearing, that there is some kind of conflict at the facilities that some of the people are at trying to make the contact, that there is a little problem with the internet or the provider or something like that in regards to that. As far as providing them with the correct numbers to call, is there any literature that you might have that you can share with us that would show a simplified chart in regards to how to do it, what times to do it, and any additions that we can help hand out or post, so when they see our pages or anything that they can know, or family could even know, that's how you can do it?
Sure. Actually, we used our CARES Act money to establish a call-in center. So in addition to, I can absolutely provide all of the cell phone numbers and some suggestions on the best times to call, but there's a main number also that I'll send out to everyone on the committee that's also on our website. That's a call-in center. So people can call this main number, either talk to a live person or leave a message. And we have our CARES Act folks, and we also have a VISTA volunteer that we got through AmeriCorps. And it's her job to actually return all those phone calls and get the messages out to the field. So I will provide that to everyone as well. We did a lot of publicity about that when it first started. And we were doing live outdoor public defender events when the weather was better. We had people on the steps of the court. We're going to start those up again as soon as it warms up. But I'll send you all that. I'll send the committee all that information.
Okay. And
if there's an issue, you should reach out directly to me or to the deputy chief too, and we will take care of it.
Okay. And you can send your contact along with.
We'll send everything.
And could you just elaborate on the jail visits and tell us how that goes? Because that, again, family members are having a little bit of concern in regards to people really getting the appropriate representation that they're supposed to get because of where they are.
It's been a challenge. We have, we never told people they had to go, like in the height of the pandemic, we told people, your attorneys, and we trust that you're going to do what's right for your clients. And people did. People continued to try to make those visits. But due to the virus, corrections shut the visits down in a number of places. And that's really frustrating for clients and families where you've already waited a month to get an appointment with your lawyer. And now the virus spikes up and the lawyer can't come because they've shut down the professional visits. So, I mean, that's a conundrum. You don't want to make people unsafe. And it's hard for the inmates too. Part of what corrections doesn't want to do is move people around the facility too much in order to spread it in the facility. So it's been challenging. People have been doing legal calls, but even that's been difficult. At one point, they were trying to limit them to 15 minutes, which is not enough time.
No.
To be able to effectively talk to their clients. And a phone call is not the same thing as a face-to-face conversation with somebody, even over video. And the visitation videos that they have. So there's an ability for incarcerated individuals and their families to visit over video. The lawyers can't use that. It's tied up for families, as it should be. People need access to families. It's also not private.
Correct. And final question, if I can, is if you have enough CARES Act money to maybe get a mobile unit, like maybe some kind of trailer that can be sat outside of the facility, so that maybe the communication can be from the trailer to inside of the of the facility, maybe. I don't know how possible that is, just to make it a little easier for both parties and to help with the COVID separation. It would just bring the visitor to the facility, but they won't go in, but maybe they can have some privacy within that trailer or within that small component in regards to better communication and more communication on a regular basis, maybe.
That's a great idea. Well, as I said, the John Day, the deputy chief, has been working with corrections on sort of what we're able to do based on their capacity and what we could provide to increase their capacity. We can follow up on that. I mean, we tried to be creative. That's a really creative idea.
Yeah.
And we'll do whatever we can to try to make this work.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for all those questions I was able to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Final quick question, Mr. Pillow. One of the, nobody wanted this pandemic, but a lot of folks, in different entities have found that, they've been able to do business in a more efficient way that may stick around for a while. And the governor talked about modernizing government, because certainly if there's one entity that's way behind on utilizing technology, it's the state, right? But, so across the board, I'm trying to look for ways at the state where we can be equally or even more efficient for a cheaper price. But my assumption is in your business, that's probably not the case because of the nature of, the face-to-face contact that's necessary, being in person and, as you say, the attorney-client privilege. So my assumption is that it's not really applicable to your office, but if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to be educated on that.
No, I think there's a few things that we found that are good. I mean, again, I resisted video court for as long as we could during the pandemic, because I don't think you get as effective representation for anybody when you're doing it that way. However, you have a lot of court dates where people just come and sit around and nothing happens, or where you don't really need the client to be there. Things like pre-trials or check-ins and things like that. So the court system is trying to move towards not being able to do some of that remotely. And I think that's good. It allows people to go to their jobs. You're not spending time in court. That's good for our clients. It'll help us because it's less time for the assigned counsel to be spending in court. And again, it allows our staff also to be able to be a little bit more nimble with what they do. They've also tried to do program applications remotely. So, somebody would come to court for the first time, realize they're eligible for a diversionary program, and then much of the rest of the proceedings could be done remotely. So I do think there are some things that we've learned that could be continued, but anything that impacts an individual's ability to talk to their lawyer, and really get the case fairly heard in front of a judge, I think is going to be problematic to continue going forward.
I think you're absolutely right. I agree with you. And, I often tell people, for many folks, a court date is nothing more than an appointment for the two attorneys to discuss your case, and then you go home and you're not even there. So hearing that maybe that's moving in a more efficient manner for defendants is really, I think it's great for everybody. It's great for the defendants, it's great for the court, and certainly, a more efficient way of doing business. So, this is awesome. And thanks so much for all that you do and for answering that question. And Mr. Chairman, thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from committee members? I don't see any hands or any waving or any jumping around. So my assumption is that we have concluded. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the great work you all do. And Deb, nice to see you there as well. Haven't seen you in a while.
Thank you very much for all the thoughtful questions, and we appreciate all the support that we get from the legislature. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So up next, we have, we'll look here at my calendar real quick.
The Division of Criminal Justice, Rep. Candelaria. Good morning, sir. How are you?
There we are. How are you? Nice to see you.
Happy Thursday.
I know. Thank God. One more day, Friday. Can't wait for that. It's supposed to be beautiful tomorrow, from what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, my God. Trust, I have my fingers crossed for a long time. I don't want to shovel any more snow. And we live in New England. We expect it to happen. We used to it. But this year was too much.
I hope I didn't jinx this, but I have a plow on a Jeep that I use for my driveway, and I took it off last weekend thinking that we're not going to need to use it anymore. But Rep. Malone, I hope I didn't jinx us.
Bad words, brother, bad words. Don't say that here.
I know.
You're gonna be responsible to come into each of our houses to shovel.
Right, to shovel.
Shoot me a text. I'll come and plow for you if it snows. I will.
That's a good idea.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us back. We did send you the information that you would ask for. I don't know where you'd like me to start since this is the first time in the subcommittee. Please just let me know what you'd like
If you
me to do.
begin, just discussing, if you can address some of the questions. I know that I don't have all the material with me. For some reason, I didn't get it. But if you can go through each question and address them, I don't know if all the other members got the materials. Yes, no?
I hope so. We sent it over a couple of days ago.
Okay. Maybe it's just me.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam
all of the materials were forwarded to all of the subcommittee members.
Okay, thank you. Maybe,
That
Thank you,
includes you,
Susan.
my
Now I
friend.
don't.
so I must have it somewhere in all my emails. But if we could get there and then
Pretty
just
straightforward, though.
summarize it, and then I'll have members ask questions.
Absolutely. The first question that I was asked was the number of prosecutors and ethnicity of breakdown for the staff. So you have a document with the whole staff breakdown and the number of positions that we have and their breakdown, and then following pages gives you the inspector ranks, the prosecutors, the AFSCME members, which are our clericals and investigators, and then the others are accountancy administrative staff. And the last page of that is going to be our workers' compensation unit, which is funded by a grant through the Workers' Compensation Commission. So our total position count you'll see is 439, but there are right now three, but going to be 4 employees in the workers' comp unit that is funded outside of the general fund. And on that document, you'll see on the first page is the categories that we went through, and those are the categories in core. So it's American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, not specified, white, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and then people that identify as 2 or more races. Then the second request was the number of open positions that we have and what we were looking to fill. That's a 1-page document, and you'll see there's we're actively recruiting 41 positions. So the 41 plus the 439 gives us 480. We are right now funded for 486. I'm holding back those 6 positions as we talked about to fully staff the conviction integrity unit and the inspector general office pursuant to what we thought the requirements were going to be on top of what the governor issued or authorized in his budget. The next was you have the report on our data from the early screening and intervention program, and it breaks down the mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and homelessness. And I'm happy to report that I'm working with our IT department to add, we capture that data for the ESI cases, but we're also going to be capturing it in our case management system for every case across the board if we know or can tell from our conversations with the individual or our conversations with their lawyer. Then the last piece that you requested was the breakdown of the cold case unit and shooting task force. So assigned to cold case, we have 1 prosecutor and 1 inspector, and the shooting task force, there's 3 inspectors, 7 prosecutors, and 1 secretary. And those are individuals who are handling the gun cases in our larger GAs where they have or larger JDs where they have the most gun violence. I think those were the questions that we were asked to bring with us, sir. So we'll be happy to answer any of the questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions from committee members?
Oh, with me today, I'm sorry, is Deputy Chief John Rosato. John's the Deputy Chief of Administration, and Peter Zelez, who is our Finance Director. I Sorry, I didn't say that before.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. We'll begin with Representative Howard,
Thank you,
followed
Mr.
by
Chairman.
Representative Nolan.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Colangelo.
Good morning.
The 630,000 for the ESI program, which, by the way, is for those of my colleagues who are not familiar, not only is an effective tool in the criminal justice system, but extremely cost saving, probably immeasurably cost saving for the state, is in my opinion. Would you agree with that, Mr. Colangelo?
Absolutely. It's hard to really say dollar wise what it's going to save, but it's savings in time, effort, and energy of people, and we're hooking them up with services so they hopefully don't come back into the system.
Sure. And when we talk about the state employees, whether in public defender's office or the prosecutors, time is money, right? We have to pay them to be there. So,
Right.
So the 630,000 ask, would that put an ESI coordinator in every GA or every JD?
It will put one. We kind of are combining them, so it'll give us a total of 12. We have 13 JDs, but Stanford Norwalk, so it'll be a combined person for Stanford Norwalk. I think we're combining Danbury and Torrington.
That's correct.
But those
Norwich
would
and
be
New London.
and Norwich and New London. But Norwich is really in New London JD, so that's kind of in the same area. So we're combining. We're going to make sure that there's representation for each GA, at least part-time during every week, sir.
All right, great, thank you. And so you probably heard my previous conversation with Christine about.
I didn't. I just got on, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So basically, the pandemic, a lot of places are pivoting, right? Are pivoting with, ways that we found things to do, things a bit more effective or efficiently and more in a more cost efficient manner. And she and I, briefly discussed how, for most defendants coming into court, especially at the GA level, their court date is not much more than an appointment that the defense attorney and the prosecutor make to discuss their case, right? I mean, half the time they sit out in the lobby, the defense attorney comes out and says, okay, you're all set, we'll put it out another month, we're gonna talk about it again. And so it goes, which wastes their time, days out of work, et cetera. And then, so I guess my question is the state's attorney's office taking advantage of the opportunities to modernize the way in which we do this to make it more cost effective and more efficient for the defendants? And it's specifically when you talk about ESI, I think ESI is probably, maybe one case, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, where, down here in New London County, we have Mike Kennedy doing it, where, he could almost, schedule a Zoom time with somebody. They could be at work, jump on, do their Zoom, preferably not when they're in the middle of surgery, as we've seen, but, do their Zoom, have a conversation, what they expect, what the expectation is, et cetera. Is there, can we create an opportunity with your office with what we've learned from COVID?
We've been working with Judicial, Rep. Howard, and thank you for the question, to do just that. In every conversation I have with Judicial, I want to maximize that technology. You're right. A lot of times we're doing check-ins. So if we could do every supervised pretrial with a judge remotely, so lawyers don't have to drive to Stanford, they could do 10 cases in 10 different JDs.
Yeah.
So I know Judge Carroll is ready, willing, and able to do that. To your end, as far as maximizing the technology, the money that we got from the COVID grant we received from OPM, we were able to provide tablets. We've got them. We're imaging them and providing them to each office for the attorneys, so that they could VPN into their desktop and have access to the case management system. We're also setting up gateways so they could, in court, enter that data right away, in real time. And so that's how we utilize the COVID money that we got. So I'm hoping to maximize that. One area where this is going to be huge, I think, is in the area of infractions. When the pandemic hit, I convinced the state's attorneys to shift all the infractions to us centrally here in Rocky Hill. We've hired 3 per diem prosecutors to handle those cases. I'm trying to get grant money to continue the funding for them, so we don't have, so it'll actually be paid for, so we're not paying them out of our I forget which pot it comes out of, John, I'm sorry.
Our PS line.
Out of our PS line. So right now, people could plead not guilty to an infraction online, get a proposal from a prosecutor, accept that proposal. If they don't accept the proposal, we're capturing emails or phone numbers so that we could do a Teams with them to have a discussion. And ultimately, moving judicial that if we they want to have a hearing, that we bring a judge or a magistrate in and do that via Teams, since they aren't on the record. So if you look at the numbers, that's at least 100,000 people that won't be on the roads, nor coming through the courthouses across across the state year over year. And we're actually able to give them almost personalized attention and an appointment, if you will, so they're not wasting 5 hours coming to sit in court because there's 200 infractions down in Bridgeport.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think especially when you talk about infractions and the ESI cases, a vast majority of them, that's the state's interest in maintaining justice and civility in our streets, as well as the interest in protecting the rights of the defendant. Neither thing is compromised in those particular cases at that level. So that's great to hear. I certainly am glad that your office is moving in that, and I am glad and will tell my colleagues that I can say personally that the ESI program is extremely successful in my experience. So I thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being before us. So I got a few questions. First, is there any progress on the Inspector General?
Right now, Rep. Nolan, we are waiting for the legislation to come out of the Judiciary Committee. I had conversations with Chairman Staffstrom, and I think there's some movement on some of the issues that I identified as far as the constitutionality. As soon as that happens, and we know the Criminal Justice Commission, we're ready to post it and move forward there. As soon as the person is, we've identified office space that we can utilize for them also, so we're not sitting on our hands. Once that person's hired, we could staff it and then start moving forward, or have them take over any investigation going forward. It's really hard for them to go back, and I don't think that's fair to them or the state attorneys that were involved in those investigations that we have pending right now.
Okay, so has the decision been made? Is there someone in limbo right now, or is that still something
No.
that's okay?
It is, the way that the statute changed by enabling the commission to look at in people that were outside the division, I would think we need to repost it to see what candidates we could capture that might not have applied last time.
Okay. You also talked about cold case inspector.
Yes, sir.
How come there's only one? Was that just?
It's the way that we allocate the funding. The shooting task force and cold case unit work hand in hand. I think Deputy Chief Rosado will correct me if I'm wrong here. I think we always ask to kind of combine those, because in our work here, they're combined. So it's the way that we allocate the PCNs for budgetary purposes. But right now there are.
What can you say what PCN is?
Oh, a position control number. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay.
So it's basically our employee identifier. Those full-time equivalents we get, they're given a PCN or position control number. So that's how we identify who's in what position. So right now, though, there are 2 prosecutors working in the cold case unit. We added one this last year, and there are 4 inspectors that they're working with, and an individual from corrections, at least one from the state police, and other inspectors as needed. So they're all working together on the shooting, and they provide support to the prosecutors in the field that are covered under the shooting task force unit for those cases, and also work on the cold cases that we're doing. One exciting thing on the cold case side is we convinced Taylor DiCello from Fox 61 to start highlighting the cases they're working on. So she's going to be doing a different case every month. So we're hoping to get more publicity to the cases and more people coming forward with information if we can. Yes, John?
So I just want to highlight for the subcommittee what I think is one of the most important aspects of this initiative. And several years ago, the Appropriations Committee gave us this funding specifically with these line items in mind. And as the Chief State's Attorney mentioned, we basically, for operational purposes, look at this as a combined effort. So when you see 2 in cold case, that's from a budget point of view. But you see there's a total of 13. So you effectively have 13 individuals at minimum working on cold cases and shooting task force cases. And the most important, I think, statistic, and it's a chilling number, and we haven't updated it in a couple of years, but last time we did, we put together a list of the number of outstanding cold case homicides unsolved, and it was 1,000 in the state of Connecticut. So when you think about that, the importance of our communities wanting to, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. Our communities wanted to know that justice is being done, having faith in the system. And if they happen to live in a neighborhood where something bad has happened and it doesn't seem like there's any progress being made towards solving the case. So by having this unit, we're able to get into those cases, go into those communities, and in most cases, take somebody that's out there right now who's free, who's capable of committing such a heinous act, who could possibly do it again, off of the street. So we really think this is one of the most important things that we do. We could always use more resources to do it, but we're grateful to have the resources that we do have. Thank you.
Okay, and
If I may add, this is Peter Zellas, Finance Director, Representative. Yes, for budgetary purposes, the legislature allocated us 2 positions for cold case and 11 positions for shooting task force within the general fund. So out of our 486 authorized positions, those 2 and 11 are allocated there. We did fill them with more senior folks there because it's a priority for us and they do great work. We did ask for additional monies to fully fund those 2 programs, or 2 SIDs as we call them here, for 22 and 23 to fully fund them. We're a little short this year. We're going to be FACing monies towards the end of the fiscal year to move some monies around. But the governor didn't include that in our request, in his request. So just want to let you know. Thank you.
okay, and wanted to ask one more question.
Proceed.
So if during the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of PDs and a lot of officers were allowed to not arrest for low-level crime just because of the issue with COVID. So they were able to give, I think, maybe a extended court date and for something.
You're breaking up. I'm sorry. I'm getting bits and pieces.
So during the beginning of COVID, there was a shift in how people were arrested for low-level crimes. Some people weren't arrested. They were given misdemeanors for some of the crimes, and some people weren't arrested and brought to jail. But I'm seeing as we are coming out of COVID a little bit, that's starting to increase a little bit more. Is that not something that we can continue to do to make it easier, not only for law enforcement to deal with more serious things and also for the courts to not be so inundated at the time?
I am trying to impress upon the state's attorney so they can impress upon their supervisors and their line attorneys that we should be doing just that. We should be treating every case under that ESI microscope, if you will, no matter how serious it is. But for the minor offenses, we should be looking at them with that goal in mind to let's shift people out of the system, get them services if we can, and focus on the more important cases or the more serious cases.
Yeah, and I only say that because, as you know, we're trying to do that for juveniles, so that there's a less incarceration and less involvement in the court. So I'm thinking with the lower level crimes that maybe that can just be extended to the adult system for not similar crimes as the children, but at least have some that are considered that would just be something that you can, write a less penalty in regards to the issue.
Ruthnell, as you know, I mean, the system, unfortunately, people have to have interaction with the police before they come to us. So they're going to get that summons, or they're going to get that ticket, or even arrested. But once they get to us, I'm making sure the prosecutors are doing that screening, sir. And it has been a priority for us, and we are, and with the ESI coordinators in every location, that'll help because it'll help focus them. But it is something that we talk about at our monthly state's attorney meetings, and we try and stress to them.
And Representative, I just want to add to that. In the last 10 years or so, we have seen, starting with our police departments in the state of Connecticut, they have every step of the way when they encounter someone in the public sphere where, as Rich pointed out, they have an obligation to interact if something is going on, whatever it may be. Someone calls for the police for help, or to report something, or they notice something. So our police are looking at these cases now, and they're taking every opportunity to try and triage. I use that term, it's a medical term, but that's an appropriate term, I think. Assess, what do we do in this situation? What do I need to do? And the police departments are getting better and better at doing that. So that's, I think, why you see the numbers overall in the system in Connecticut are trending down. And then what Mr. Colangelo referred to is then we as prosecutors are doing the same thing. That's essentially what ESI is. It's an opportunity to upfront, efficiently, and quickly triage a case that actually comes into the court, because that's where we handle it. So long as everyone in the system is doing that triaging and making determinations on how to best handle a situation, if the offender is someone who's in a mental health crisis, maybe there's a better way of handling that on the street with the right professionals in place. And there are places around the country that are actually doing some very interesting things in that regard. But that's the philosophy, I think, of law enforcement in Connecticut. I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of police departments, but I'm going to. And that's what I see them doing. Our state police are doing that. Our municipal police departments are doing that. It requires some training and some re-education and thinking, rethinking how to do this. But now we're doing the same thing with the cases that we handle. So I think that's the big change. I think Connecticut has a lot to be proud of in that area. We have more work to do, to be sure, but a lot of good is happening.
And I'm in total agreement with that, because I know myself, and I'm sure Rep. Howard are a little bit more lenient in regards to some of the things that are happening, but making sure that they understand that there is a penalty, and they have to get that penalty, but at the same time not trying to dig in so hard that it creates such a hardship for them. I appreciate your answers, and I wish you guys a good day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from committee members? I just have just a couple of questions on the cold case unit. You spoke about you have one prosecutor and one inspector, and you also mentioned there were about 1,000 cases, unsolved cases.
Yes, sir.
How many are being worked on proactively right now? How many cases are active?
I'd say that they're actively working on 5 to 6 on top of the cases that they've made arrests in. So there is probably another 10 or 12 there that they're looking at. And while the inspectors, they're constantly assessing. So a department would say, "Hey, I've got this case. Let's, could you take a look at it?" Every year we put out the deck of cards with the 52 cases that we identify that we want to highlight this year. So if leads come in, they're following them up. Obviously, that's a place that we could use more resources, but it's not like the departments aren't looking at those cases themselves. We're just an additional resource for them.
Okay.
Right.
And in regards to the new conviction entry unit, I'm looking at the budget for it. It provides funding for a prosecutor, police inspector, and paralegal. What's the volume of I'm assuming people coming forward and saying they have been wrongly convicted. what do you expect that volume to be, if you have an estimate based on your experience, and the unit, the funding, is it enough to address that volume?
Well, when I was appointed chief state's attorney, I set up a task force, and they gave me a report on the best practices and what the unit should have. So the unit, based on their analysis, should have a total staff of 6, 2 attorneys, 3 inspectors, and a paralegal. The governor was kind enough to put 3 positions in his budget. That's why we're holding 3 open positions to be able to staff them as we feel appropriate based on those recommendations. If the committee could give us another position, because we're taking those from other places, other needs, but to fully staff that unit, it would be 6. It's hard to make a guesstimate, but I mean, what I would probably ask the committee the unit to do is to look at individuals that file applications through themselves or by their attorney, individuals that are still incarcerated, and start with those claims first, and then work down. I don't know if we want to have a way we're not going to look at misdemeanors. We're not going to look at that. I think we should look at everybody that brings something to us and investigate and determine whether we have the ability to investigate and determine whether that conviction we still have confidence in it. But I think we should originally start with those individuals. So if you look at that, there's 3,000 people that are convicted right now and serving sentences. So I don't know how many of them would be. Looking across the country, they're not going to want for any work, from what I hear. And I want to make sure that they only, it's similar to cold case, they'll do an assessment, they'll do a triage. We're going to start with this case first, and we're going to work this one up, and then start with this one and work through it, and hopefully get to everyone that has a claim. But to fully staff it, we're going to be at 6 there, sir.
It will also allow a lot of the cases without a conviction integrity unit go through that habeas process where they're collaterally challenging their conviction. And the hope is that those cases that are caught up in that habeas process right now that really should be looked at from a conviction integrity point of view will have a quicker way of getting that case looked at and resolved. Because the habeas process itself, there's a lot of cases that go through that. And so the meritorious cases, if you will, get lost in the shuffle of the high volume. So that's another good piece of this that I think is going to really benefit the system overall.
Thank you for that. And so following that same line, so you, based on the research you did, the unit usually comprised of 6 individuals. So you would need approximately another $300,000 to make that happen.
I think that's pretty fair. I mean, Peter will rule book us if need be, but I think we're basically talking about going from 3 that the governor's budget proposes to an additional 3. So you probably just take that number and
Double it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Larry, if like I said, if you guys can't do that, I'm holding those positions to be able to do that. But if you can give them to us, you'll make a state's attorney in the field really happy, because I'll be able to give them, fill a need that they have that I've been pushing them off on, because I think that program is going to be so important for the state.
Exactly. And actually, I'm taking notes, and hopefully when we have an opportunity, the committee will sit down. We'll have more detailed discussion about this. But I think if we want to be proactive, and my assumption is that you'll have an influx of a lot of individuals applying, right?
Yeah.
That's the number of staff that you have is not going to be sufficient. But we're definitely going to look at that as well. Now, in regards to the Inspector General, how soon would it take to get that off the ground?
As soon as the legislature fixes the statute comes out of judiciary and is voted on.
Okay.
Once it's signed, we could have it posted the next day.
Okay.
For those type of positions, we usually keep it open for the minimum 2 to 3 weeks. Then the commission, we have monthly commission meetings set up. So, I know what they are, and I'll try and get it into the quickest meeting that we can to get it, get that person selected, and then start moving with them selecting, their inspectors. And, in the governor's budget, they gave us 9 positions for that. In doing my assessment, I believe we need 11. So we're holding those additional positions to be able to do that. So we're, ready, willing, and able to give them everything they're going to need to do their job.
Right. So just to be clear, Representative Candelaria, the positions that are in the budget, we wouldn't be getting that funding for those positions until July 1. So I think what Chief State's Attorney is saying is accurate, because we could start the process of filling, especially the IG, because we put aside a couple of vacancies in reserve to get this going faster. But it would be a process of then, the funding coming into place, being available July 1, and then, so that's about, I think you realistically would expect the unit to really get up and running would be in the summertime, at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, perfect. All right, those are my questions. Any other questions?
We will say goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
One quick other ask, just a reminder, is just for the training budget, sir.
Yes, that's how I wanted to bring that. Thank you, Rich.
Those that are not speaking, can you just please mute your phones, please, or your computers?
So really quickly, and thank you
you
for bringing that up. We were very grateful to get an additional $20,000 in our training budget to bring us up to 47,000, originally from 27,000. We had asked for 150, and we gave a very detailed list of the kinds of trainings that we want to do. And I believe it was Representative Nolan and Representative Rosario that brought this up in the big meeting about, some of the wellness training. That was included in there in a pretty significant way.
Okay.
And I would just say, if there's one way that would be, I think, a very easy and economical way to allow us to improve how we operate in every facet, it's our training, because we are always under the gun with our training. If we had that approximately 150,000 a year, then we could do a lot more to make some of the changes that Chief State Attorney Colangelo talked about. So just keep that in your mind as well when you're thinking about our budget. We would really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Representative Nolan.
I'm really happy to hear about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is a great thing, and that's an area where we fail to increase any kind of services and wellness for every agency. And I think that those are areas that we have to continue to look at to strengthen them, to make sure that we cover those who work for us and make sure that they get the needed wellness programs that are out there that we fail to provide for them. Appreciate that. And last question is, with the amount of positions that are in the Inspector General's office, do you see a hindrance on your employees that might want to go that way? Is there any discussion that you've been hearing, or any worry that you would have a mass exodus just to apply for any of those positions?
Well, if we do, if we have the position count, we'll be able to backfill. I think it's important to get, individuals that have experience in those areas, that understand what the tasks they're being called on to do. So I'm hoping that we're going to get the more senior people to apply and want to do that work for us. Okay.
So is there a pipeline kind of like within the department that will feed people?
There could be for the inspectors, sir, and also for the prosecutors. Absolutely. So we probably wouldn't be hiring new people for that unit. Maybe some of the inspectors, because I don't know how many inspectors would want to go over, because they get set in their ways in their regional offices, but they're absolutely, you understand the police officers, the investigators, but you absolutely, there is a pipeline there. But, as soon, to Rep. Candelaria's question, as soon as the IG is in place, I'm hoping to get them a chief inspector to work with them. That's one of the positions that I will put there from the open positions we have. And I spoke to Commissioner Ravella, and until we get our staff up and running, the state police are ready, willing, and able to allow us to utilize state troopers to do the investigations like we're doing now. So the second that person's there and I get them that chief inspector, they're going to be able to up and run with, and maybe not have their full staff, but be able to do what the legislature and the state wants them to do.
Okay. I'm going to stop there, and if I have anything else, I'll just send it to you. But I want to thank the chair for allowing me to answer multiple questions today, and also for everyone who showed up to help us understand what's going on. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
We are here if you need any additional information. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Any other questions before we go? I see none. Well, thank you again, Mr. Colangelo, and thank you. Thank
Have
you
a
all
great
for
day.
your time. Take care. All right, so now up next we have Judicial Department. And I see Judge Carroll with us already.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yep, good morning, still morning. So thank you again for taking the time to be with us today, Judge Carroll. If you can just walk us through your responses to the committee members, we'll start there, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Sure. Thank you very much, Representative Candelaria and members of the subcommittee. Again, I'm Judge Pat Carroll. I'm the Chief Court Administrator. With me on the line today, I have all of our executive directors in the judicial branch. That includes Libby Graham, our Director of Administrative Services, Gary Roberge, our Administrative Director of the Court Support Services Division, Ty Erickson, Executive Director of the Court Operations Unit, Don Turnbull, Director of IT, and Melissa Farley, our Director of External Affairs. So they'll assist me in answering any questions you might have. You know that we've already submitted a pretty comprehensive binder to you. What we did is we broke it down in terms of the questions that were raised at the larger Appropriations Committee meeting. And Representative Candelaria, if you'd like me to, I'll just go through it question by question. Okay? All right.
If you just summarize, so like that, you don't have to go into all the details, but
okay,
just summarize it, and now.
All right. Yeah, I'll summarize it, and then we can go right to your questions. Item number one was in response to Representative Pavlak D'Amato's question about asking that we provide as much detail about what is needed for the information technology system upgrades to continue and enhance our remote work. We spent about $2.5 million over the last year in creating a virtual infrastructure from the ground up. We've been very successful in that effort. Much of what we've done, though, has been to acquire the hardware and the software that we need to create and sustain that network. And the costs associated with that are annual costs, largely for the licenses, for the software moving forward. And we have projected that we will need an additional $740,000 to sustain the remote justice program during the next fiscal year. In addition to the hardware and software costs of standing up the network, we also have some increased security costs. I think I mentioned when I appeared before the larger committee, we have been subjected in the judicial branch to one ransomware attack. We were able to contain it. We didn't lose any data by it. And we also were victimized by the SolarWinds intrusion, which impacted so many governments throughout the country. I think throughout the world. I think I mentioned that I doubted that the Russians who were behind this have any interest in our motor vehicle dockets. But nonetheless, the malware that SolarWinds intrusion deposited in our system is the type of malware that can emerge at any time. Now, our IT personnel believe that we have captured and isolated the servers that were impacted by the SolarWinds intrusion, but there's no way we can be sure. So we have a significant additional cost associated with cybersecurity over the coming years, and that as well is set forth in the binder. I believe it will cost approximately $700,000 to build up and maintain our enhanced security over the next 12 months. And then cloud licensing costs will approach $300,000. And that too is more fully set forth in the information that I've submitted to you. Senator Austin, in question number 2, had requested information about our vacancies and what we intend to do with respect to filling those vacancies. And we provided you with a chart on page 5 of our submission, which shows that we have vacancies across every single one of our divisions, ranging from a low of 2.7% vacancies in the Supreme Court and a high of 22.3% vacancies within our IT division. But we have a significant number of unfilled vacancies. And those vacancies are unfilled because throughout the pandemic, we have been very cautious and measured in the ways that we have been refilling those vacancies. We understood that we needed to be stalwart partners in saving money for the state. So any filling of vacancies that we did so on an absolutely strictly as needed basis. And now we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. What we would like to do is fill only 19% of our vacancies that are outstanding. That amounts to 135 positions that we'd like to fill. And we are going to prioritize in the filling of those positions, filling positions that really have the most direct impact on the people who use the courts, the people who will be most impacted by judicial operations. And that too is set forth in greater detail in the information that we've submitted to you. Representative Candelaria, you raised the question about our ability to retain judicial marshals. And if you look on page 6, item number 3, we entered into an agreement for a comprehensive salary review of our judicial marshal ranks. And on the bottom of page 6, we have, again, a chart which outlines what we would like to be able to do in terms of pay increases for our judicial marshals. What the study disclosed was that increasing the base salary of our judicial marshal trainees by 3% would greatly enhance our ability to retain the folks that we invest so much in terms of training, to get them on the job, only to lose them to state or municipal police departments. And then we have a lower increase, a suggested increase for our lead judicial marshals of 1.5%. But that was all done as a result of a study we conducted with an outside vendor, and those were the recommendations of the outside vendor. It was a joint effort between IBPO, our Judicial Marshal Union, and the branch. And I think that the recommendations are fair, and I hope that you'll give some consideration to that. As a matter of fact, when I conclude here today, I'm heading over to a graduation ceremony for our most recent class of judicial marshals. And when I look out on them, I think there's 22 of them. I wonder, as I'm swearing them in, how many of them will be with us a year from now. And unfortunately, our track record, because we do such a good job training them, is that a significant percentage of the people we train and get into the ranks ultimately leave for higher paying positions. Representative Dathan asked a question about our workers' comp appropriation and why we have to handle that ourselves as opposed to the Department of Administrative Services. When I closed, I indicated that that was not a decision that the judicial branch made. That was a decision that was imposed upon us by DAS. And perhaps I can call on Libby Graham, our Executive Director of Administrative Services, to provide just a little more detailed explanation of what the workers' comp appropriation is all about. Libby, can you jump in?
Sure, happy to, Judge Carroll. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. The workers' compensation appropriation was inserted into our budget in fiscal year 26. We, along with a few other agencies, were assigned responsibility for that funding. What's interesting about this particular line item is that when the transfer occurred, it was simultaneous with the Juvenile Justice Initiative, transferring responsibility of children previously cared for by DCF. At the time DCF had the funding for workers' compensation, their appropriation was $1 million greater than what was transferred over to the judicial branch. So we proceeded with the management of the program, as you would expect, with a great deal of specialized training, particularly in the detention centers, to assist and reduce the number of incidents that might result in a workers' comp claim. But from the beginning, we were in a poor position because we were appropriated insufficient funding. So every year since that time of being assigned the responsibility for this line item, we've had to go before the FAC and ask for additional, ask for funding to be moved into that line item so that we avoid a deficit. But that is the history behind the assignment of workers' comp to the judicial branch. And Representative Dathan, I am not in a position to directly answer why we are not included in moving back to Department of Administrative Services as the other agencies who previously managed their individual workers' comp line item have been. But that is the history, Judge Carroll, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Item number 5 in our binder deals with the security. And I believe it was Representative Johnson who asked how we provide security for judges and staff. And I can tell you it's a real challenge when I compare the level of security that the United States Marshal Services provides to federal judge and federal court employees with the level of security and protection that we can provide to state court judges and employees. There's a stark difference. Here in the state, we have a tiered approach. We focus on, number one, hardening all of our facilities, making sure that our entrances are secure, that we have adequate screening protocols in place at all of our entrances. We want to make sure that we have all the state-of-the-art screening tools that are necessary, including metal detectors, wands, and x-ray machines. Recently as within the last month, we detected one individual who was attempting to enter an open courthouse with a loaded handgun. Thankfully, we had all the screening tools in place to prevent that, to prevent that individual from entering into the building. A third tier of our tiered approach to security is comprehensive training of our security personnel. I mentioned last time before the full committee, I'll mention it again today. We are the only judicial marshal training academy in the United States that is accredited by CALEA, the National Accrediting Agency for Law Enforcement Training Academies. That's a point of pride for us, but it also assures on an annual basis that our training protocols are examined and qualified to meet the rigorous standards of CALEA. And most importantly, the most important component of our security approach is adequate staffing. And that has been a constant challenge for us because so many of our personnel leave the ranks of judicial marshals to seek better paying jobs in other law enforcement facilities. So that's how we approach our security. We also interact with CTIC, the Connecticut Threat Information Center, where we have a national clearinghouse of all threats that are registered against judges and judicial branch staff. And I will tell you, sadly, the threats registered against judges occur on a daily basis. And many include threats, death threats that are directed to specific judges online. Needless to say, it unnerves our judges. I recounted a story when I appeared before the full committee about a judge who, upon leaving the courthouse in Hartford a month or so ago, was followed by an individual whom had appeared before her within the hour before she left court, followed her onto the highway, came within inches of her rear bumper. Police were summoned, but they were never able to apprehend the offender. But those are the types of things that our judges are subjected to on a regular basis. It's a matter of great concern. There's no easy way to resolve that matter. It would be cost prohibitive, I think, to provide individual marshal protection for each judge as he or she enters the building or leaves the building. But we do the best we can with the resources we have. We also have a judicial threat database where we track each and every threat that's been registered against a judge. And that database is used collaboratively with the state and local police when a threat reaches what we believe to be a serious level We get great cooperation from the state police and local police in providing protection at the home of the individual judge who has been threatened. I'm not sure who asked with respect. It might have been Representative Johnson asked about threat assessments of litigants. I misunderstood the question when she posed it. I thought she was asking whether there was any comprehensive screening protocol in place for every individual involved in the dissolution of marriage process. And I said that there was not, and that it would be cost prohibitive to engage in that type of screening process. But I neglected to note that on the domestic violence side of the ledger, we have comprehensive screening protocols in place to identify the risk level of individuals accused of domestic violence, to provide a level of assurance and protection to the victims of those threats of domestic violence, and to root those who are found to have a high risk of offense into the appropriate treatment. I have Gary Roberge, the Executive Director of the Court Support Services Division, on the line, and I think that he might be able to provide a more detailed characterization of the level of evaluation that we engage in terms of threat of assessment of domestic violence litigants who appear before us. So Gary, perhaps you can just fill in a little bit more specifics as to what our screening protocols are all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge Carroll, and good morning, everybody. It's good to be here today. Again, just to follow up on what Judge Carroll was saying about the domestic violence screening instrument, it's an instrument that we use on all domestic violence cases that come into our courts. That's approximately 25 to 30,000 a year to screen for exactly what Judge Carroll was stating, possible future violence with the instant offense victim or a future victim, right? So it's a validated assessment that we've been using for years here. We have revalidated it with the author of the assessment, Dr. Kirk Williams, and it's an extremely useful tool for us to identify appropriate level of service and needs that the offender may have, and to also plan for victim safety. Right, we work very closely with the victim advocates from CCADB and the court-based victim advocates around domestic violence. And then we also have the lethality supplemental risk indicator, which goes a little deeper, and that's more around lethality. And we also do a certain level of assessment on restraining orders, temporary restraining orders that come in through the civil side. But really, in all of the work that we do in the branch, we use the DVSI for domestic violence cases in adult probation when somebody is sentenced to a period of probation supervision for a domestic violence offense. So we're always assessing for risk and need, and in that also any other identifiers that may come up that may be problematic that we would obviously share with the courts, with the marshals, of any of the information that we obtain. So just some of the items that we use in our process to try to identify some of the circumstances that Representative Johnson was asking about.
Okay, the next item question that we responded to is item number 6 on page 9, and it was a question posed by Representative Porter. She asked that we provide information on the consolidation of the youthful offender services and juvenile alternative incarceration line items, and also she asked that we describe the impact of proposed budget reduction on those items. While I've got Gary on the line, Gary is best suited to talk about those items, and if Gary, if you can weigh in on that. It's on page 9 of the binder, and Libby, you may also want to join in on that as well.
Okay, sure. I'll jump in briefly, and then Libby, please, anything that I missed. But on the line item consolidation, this line item goes back to the raise the age when we transferred the 16 and 17-year-olds to the juvenile justice system many years ago now. And really, just by combining it, it's going to give us more flexibility in how we can use these funds to serve not only the 16 and 17-year-olds that came over, but our entire juvenile justice system, right? We have a lot of moving parts, especially since the transfer of the delinquent cases from the Department of Children and Family back in 2018 that came over, and any prospective transfers that may happen that are being discussed this legislative session as well. So, and it creates certain efficiencies for us with respect to, paying our bills, right? And I guess in a sense makes it easier, but a more efficient way of being able to pay our bills. So just more flexibility with how we can spread our money around the entire juvenile justice system and our efficiency with paying those bills. And with respect to the 1.5 million on the juvenile line item, we're fortunate that you all have invested money in the branch to provide services to both the juveniles and the adults. Through that process, we have a pool of money that throughout the course of a fiscal year, because programs are delayed starts, right? So we RFP for a program, and instead of starting on October 1st for whatever reason, zoning problems, renovation problems, siding problems, equipment problems, it gets delayed a month or two. So you accumulate savings in those types of situations. And then we have, vacancy savings. So people take other jobs. Many of our staff that work at the contracted providers that we work with come to work in the branch as probation officers, as bail commissioners, as juvenile probation officers. So, and as they create vacancies in those programs, by the time that they interview and hire, it accumulates over a period of time. So we feel that by just keeping it close to the vest within this fiscal year, that we can identify that level of savings that we're being asked to with respect to the juvenile and the adult line items. Libby, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add that I missed.
Thanks, Gary. The only thing I'd like to add is a little bit of history on the process that we went through this year that resulted in this continued reduction to the juvenile OCE line item. As it was stated in our initial, Judge Carroll's initial testimony at the Appropriations Subcommittee meeting, we began meeting with OPM back in October to discuss our shared budget concerns. And so at that time, as you know, the state budget was in dire straits. Our circumstances have changed as the months have progressed. But this reduction, as Gary properly represents, is something that is short-term. It's something that is possible based on the reasons Gary just described. Going forward, it's not a position that the branch would want to sustain or could sustain, because you can't continue to rely on vacancy savings and program delays when you're obliged to provide a full continuum of care for adult and juvenile offenders, in this case, juvenile. So it's really a short-term, time-specific opportunity that we felt we could exercise at this moment in time when we've had the I'll say chaos of and tragedy of COVID that we've had to deal with. So thanks very much, Gary, but otherwise nothing else to add.
Item number 7 on page 10, I think, is also critically important to represent.
Carol, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you.
Sure.
We have about a half-hour time
Okay.
frame left for questions. So if you just want to do like a brief summary of all that's remaining, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, I think it's pretty quick, Representative Cantilleri.
Sure.
Representative Porter wanted to know if we have the necessary funding to move juveniles out of detention centers and into the community. Gary, what's your assessment on that? I know that we have a specific request set forth on page 11.
Yeah, so I think we're in good shape. There was a significant amount of money transferred to the branch when the services came over from the Department of Children and Family. Not the entire amount that the branch requested, but a significant amount nonetheless. And we have been able to make it work. Again, going back to my previous answer, we had funding for community-based programs, and we have since, in the last 2.5, 3 years, opened up 3 staff secure programs in the community with respect to the transfer. We have 1 secure, and we're in the process of trying to execute a 2nd secure. We can make it work, but we're going to have to revisit, as I said in our meeting last week, that our initial estimates, I think, were closer to what the branch requested initially, which was about $7 million more than we were appropriated at the time. but it's going to still take us another year or two to build out the second program and to get to that level. So at this point in time, we're moving towards moving the kids out of detention. Do we need to revisit? And then, on page 11, the credible messengers, and this has to do with the transfer with our existing juvenile justice population under our juvenile probation, traditional probation supervision, and really our whole conversation that we're having around car theft, right? And what can we do about that? So there's this programming and services out there, credible messengers, other advocacy programs for juveniles. It's really about individuals with lived experience, providing peer mentoring or lived experience mentoring, I should say, and mentoring services to kids. And we're very interested in expanding that service that we have not yet been funded for. And that's what's on page 11 with the 2.3 million estimate for that cost, which would get us a program in each of our 5 regions.
Representative Rosario asked about the reentry process in the submission. I think we have 3 pages outlining all of the reentry functions that the judicial branch engages in. Senator Austin asked about what the judicial branch is doing to address mental health needs of defendants who appear in the court. Briefly, I can say that we're doing everything we can to divert those individuals who are well known to all of us. They're well known to the police, well known to the people who work in the courts on a daily basis. And our goal is to get them out of the criminal justice system and into the mental health treatment program. And what I've submitted outlines a series of collaborative programs with DEMIS that we're working on in that regard. And I believe that concludes what we have in the binder, Representative Candelaria, and we're ready to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Judge Carroll, for that. Representative Nolan.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask some more questions. Thank you for what you did send us. It was very helpful. We do appreciate that information. It was good information for us to understand so that we can share to those who ask questions about it. But I just have one. I actually got a few questions, but I'm going to start slow and then
okay.
I'm going to step back so others can ask questions, and then I'll come back if possible. Sure. You talked about the 19% and 135 employees.
Yes.
Now, seeing that there are employees that are going to be required to help those that are in need or those that are going through whatever they're going through, why did we stop at 19%?
Well, again, I think it's my desire, my recognition of the challenges that the state is operating under, that you're operating under in balancing the budget. I did not want to be over aggressive in making those requests. Needless to say, I'd be happy to fill 50% or 75%, but we've identified the priority needs. We think that we can fulfill our functions by filling 19% or 135 of those positions, but I could certainly just as easily increase the request. I was trying to keep the request reasonable and achievable in what you have to do in balancing the budget.
Okay. If I can request that you go up to maybe 35%, and just highlight those that you added, and let the Appropriations Committee decide if they're going to plus or
Representative Nolan, that is the kind of request that I absolutely am thrilled to receive from the subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, because
I think that, if it's to help the people that are in most need to be helped, I think that it's important that we recognize that if, as a committee, it's decided that no, unfortunately, we can't do that, then let us decide that we don't steal any opportunity for you to be able to have that.
Sure, we will get on that right away.
And I'm glad, I was really glad to hear that your marshals are up to the CALEA standard. That is something that to be very proud about, because that is probably, some people consider that the highest of the highest. I'm glad that that's something that you've been able to do and keep going on.
I know that given your background and Representative Howard's background, you understand how important CALIA certification is. And I would also extend an invitation to you at any time you want to come over and see the Academy in operation. We'd love to host you.
All right, I'm going to make sure that Representative Howard is the driver for when we do that. We can get over there.
Okay. Good.
And you talked about the threats in regards to some of the staff. And have you guys ever thought about the travel from work to home and home to work program where marshals pick up and drop off staff?
I don't think we've realistically ever considered that, because I think the cost would be prohibitive. I also don't think that, given the existing responsibilities that judicial marshals have with respect to our facilities, that we would be able to achieve a program like that and still maintain the responsibilities we have with screening every facility before we open each morning, calibrating all of the metal detectors and x-ray machines at the entrances of each of our facilities each day. And you'd also have the issue with respect to vehicles to provide the transport. We wouldn't expect that our marshals would use personal vehicles to engage in such effort, and the purchase of the number of vehicles you would need to provide that service would be very significant.
Mm-hmm. Well, the only reason I asked is because I know that the state owns vehicles, and some of those vehicles go dormant for a little while, and it might be able to be a request to get some of those vehicles for situations where there are difficulties that arise, and that there is some kind of coverage that needs to be had with some of our judges, and that it not be a full-time position, but maybe on a emergency basis occasion that there would be some either per diem and or part-time person that could be able to cover the threat issue that might be arising at the time in that situation.
Our Director of Marshal Services is on the call as well, and I'll ask him to take a look at that possibility.
And I have a couple more questions, but Representative Lear, I'll go again later, maybe.
Thank you, Representative Nolan. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't know if Rep Nolan was going to touch on this, because it's probably something that strikes both of us. But jumping over to juveniles, so the $2.3 million for the Credible Messenger program, do we know if other states are doing that and how successful that's being? I mean, it sounds great, honestly, but I just didn't know if it's something that's worked somewhere else.
I know that every program we engage in the Court Support Services Division, we do so only after comprehensive planning and investigation. So let me ask Director Roberge to fill in the holes for you on the questions that you posed. Garrett?
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Carroll. Yes, Representative Howard, it is used in other states, and we've engaged conversation with those states as to their observations and their experience with the programs. And from all accounts, it's one of the latest programs that's solid. I mean, it's been in use for a few years now, and we have something similar to it here, although not the extent to the full program. But to answer your question, yes, it's used in other states, and the program's been studied, and it is proven to be effective with respect to, again, providing individuals with lived experience that work with the kids that we have, and even the young adults in the adult system. It can roll over to where it's been proven to be effective. And then in addition, it provides wraparound services. So it's just not like, a service where you go to brick and mortar, but it's more in the community, in the home with the families, engaging the families, and more around 24/7 accessibility to this service to support the kids in the community. Yes, it's used in other states, to answer your question.
Thank you for that. So, I mean, this whole issue, because I sit on judiciary too, and this whole issue with what the juveniles are engaging in our state on an increasing level is concerning. I mean, yes, it's concerning to people having their car stolen, of course. But the bigger concern to me is that the underlying problem with most of these juveniles is there's no parental buy-in and there's no guidance for them, perhaps outside of our system. So to me, this, taking somebody who is a positive mentor, even if they've had, lengthy criminal history and have reformed, probably better than anybody else, I think maybe to this point, to have those folks mentor these kids onto a better track. Because I always say this, my favorite line is good judgment comes from experience comes from poor judgment. So if we can take an individual who has exercised poor judgment, gained experience, and take a young man or a woman, young lady, and take that experience that they've gained and skip the poor judgment phase for them, I mean, that's money well spent. And the other question is that money that's being spent in some part being given to, we had a lengthy public hearing in judiciary yesterday about folks who have a criminal history unable to find employment. So I'm just wondering if from a state's perspective, this is a win-win where we're finding employment for people with criminal histories where they're doing something positive and redirecting our youth onto a better path. Would that be how that would work?
Gary, go ahead, Gary.
Okay, absolutely. Employment is part of it. I mean, we spent yesterday a couple hours here in the branch talking about employment and what we're going to do for summer opportunity for the juveniles that we supervise, right? But it's all built into the system and it's so right. We have, conversations going with the Department of Labor now and engaging the workforce development boards around the state and how we can incorporate that into employment. We have employment services in our LINK program right now. So employment is a very critical part of what we're doing with our juveniles. And again, with our adults as well. We have it in both systems. So that's spot on, Representative Howard.
All right, perfect. So thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time. Gentlemen, I just would say this to you. Perhaps offline, maybe we could spend some time together because I think that there, with my presence here, my presence on judiciary and my background in policing and all the work I do with the youth, there is a solution here. And this may be, a really bright light in that solution. So I would definitely like to speak with you guys more on this, not today, but at some point in the near future. So I'll make sure that you get my information so we can set that up. And thank you both. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Howard, we will follow up and set that up in the very short term. Okay.
Excellent. Representative Gonzalez.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Judge Carroll.
Good morning, Representative Gonzalez.
My question is about, you said that you're looking for protection for judges and also for the staff. And I would like to know, if this is something that we have to add. Okay, like let's say that your salary is $100,000, and let's say that we have to add whatever it's going to cost individually by staff, by judges. And this is something that at the end you can use that for the pension. That's one question. And second, I have a little bit of concern about that. Because if we end up giving protections to judges and staff, then what we're going to do is police officers and they start asking for the same thing. It's like, yes, you're going to get this job, but we're going to give you protection. This is an additional cost, and in my opinion, we offer a job, and if you apply for the job, you agree for the job. Why then we have to pay for security when it's going to be, an extra cost for the state? And again, we can open the box here for the police department to start requesting, those kind of services. Can you answer the question?
Sure. I think there are a couple of levels to your question with respect to adding the cost of protection for a judge to a judge's salary, and that impacting a judge's pension. No, that would never happen. There's a statute that clearly defines what a judge's pension is based upon, and it's based upon the judge's salary at the time of departure from service. And it's also important to note, Representative Gonzalez, I've made no request in the current budget for any additional funding for judge security. So I think that a lot of the comments that I made today were in response to questions posed by Representative Nolan. I think that what I talked about was aspirational. I wanted to sensitize you and the members of the committee to the very serious concerns that judges have had with respect to threats that have been made on their life and safety, and not only their life and safety, but on the lives and safeties of their families. Judges have had images of their spouses and children posted online. I think that judges have become somewhat hardened to these types of threats, but a spouse or a young child seeing that type of a threat on the internet with their images posted on the internet, that's a matter of great concern to them. I don't think there's any easy solution. I don't think there's any amount of money that you can throw at this problem, short of doing exactly what you talked about, providing, round the clock, almost like Secret Service type coverage to the judges. And I'm not requesting that. And I know that that's unattainable. It's unrealistic. All I've done is said that there are threats that have been made against judges. We try to provide security within the resources that are given to us, within the training that we provide to our security personnel, and we do the best we can. We try to heighten the sensitivity of judges. We have judges submit to active shooter training. We, at this year's Connecticut Judges Institute, which is scheduled for June, we have the United States Marshal for the District of Connecticut coming in to talk to all the judges about being more present and aware of what's happening in the workplace and outside of the workplace to enhance your personal protection. But I've made no requests in this budget, and I make no request now, Representative Gonzalez, for any additional funding in that regard.
Well, yeah, thank you for that answer. But imagine if we start providing security for, for judges and the staff, police officer, we have also a problem with DCF. They also complain about, about the same problem. So if we open for one department, then I think that we will create here a big problem, and we're not going to be able to solve problems to anybody, because DCF, they complain about that too. Police officers, they complain about that too. So I think that a job comes with some maybe challenges and some responsibility. And I think that when a person, like, let's say a member of DCF applies for the job, and people start threatening that, even though that we maybe some of us would not look at it that way, but I will say that that's part of the job. You take the job, and sometimes you have to run with some of those problems, because even though they just say they're not asking, you're not requesting for that, but I think that that's something that we have to be careful for us to agree with something like that. But thank you for your answer. Thank
Representative, yeah, and Representative Gonzalez, I want the record to be clear. You and I are absolutely on the same page. I agree with all of the issues that you've raised and concerns that you've raised, and that is why I have not requested any of the things that you're talking about.
Well, Judge, thank you very much, and thank you for saying that we're on the same page. I don't think that it's that many times we don't end up in the same page.
I don't know.
Thank you very much for that.
I think over the course of our relationship, we've been on the same page more than you're willing to admit.
Well, guess what? Maybe this is a good start. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Gonzalez. Before I entertain other questions, I just have a couple of questions. So the department has been allocated 4,229 positions. Now, you have filled 3,547 with 682 vacant. My question to you, are those vacant positions currently funded? The 600.
I don't believe all of them are funded, Representative Candelaria. and Libby is in a much better position to provide the specifics you require. Libby, can you deal with that?
Sure, happy to, Judge Carroll. Representative Candelaria, our requested budget is premised on filling that 135 position or 19% that Judge Carroll has previously referenced. So that would provide the funding to fill that number of vacancies. Beyond that, we would need additional funding if we were to fill more. Okay. So it's through the biennial budget that we have requested funding that will meet our planned needs as currently expressed to you.
And do you have a detailed list of what those positions are, those 135 positions that you'll be filling? Do we have an idea what that is?
We do.
Well,
go ahead, Lip.
I'm sorry, Judge Carroll. I jumped the gun there. Thank you. As you can tell, the chart was represented so that you could see the largest percent deficit. Those are the areas where we will be making investments. One of the challenges in reporting to you vacancies versus an intended hiring plan is that you could have someone who retires, a senior level person, but then you bring the replacement in at a lower level. So we will work to provide additional detail for you, and it will focus on the 3 areas Judge Carroll has mentioned: the judicial marshals, the IT area, and then to maintain and enhance our court operations so that we can continue to do judicial business.
Thank you. And in regards to the judicial marshal pay scale, Judge Carroll, the study that you did was a national study to look at what the pay scale is, or was it a comparison within other departments within the state?
It was both, and Representative Candelaria, we have actually submitted the very comprehensive study together with our submission, okay. And it set forth all of the data gathering that was engaged in connection with preparing the study. It included interviews with the impacted individuals. It included comparison with police departments and other law enforcement agencies. It's a very comprehensive report, and it is appended to our submission.
All right, thank you for that. And right now, this is not in the budget, correct?
Libby, did we make that specific line item in our PS request?
No, sir, we didn't, because the study was completed after the submission of our budget. So if there is a desire to support the pay increase, we would need additional funding to do so. And you will see, Representative Candelaria, when you look at the report, that there was a comparison to our surrounding states and also to some of our DOC positions.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I think we've been having this conversation for many years now. I think it's critical that we bring them to a pay level that's comparable not only to other states, but to other departments within our system. So I think that's important for us to definitely address. I'll stop there with my 2 questions. I'll open it up for my colleagues. Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to rewind back to when Greg was talking about the juveniles. In regards to the detention centers, could you give me us a reminder of the transfer amount that was used to do community-based programs?
I'm not sure I heard that, Representative Nolan.
The transferred amount for community-based programs.
Oh,
I know
okay.
I think you were short $7 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But what was the amount that was transferred over, right?
Right. And I think Gary and Libby can provide that detail.
Yeah, Libby, would you like me to jump in?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Nolan. So we go back to our 2018, 2019 estimates, and we were, I think that there was 16,380,000 that was transferred over at the time. And I believe the branch's estimation and request was closer to the 23, 24 million mark. I think it was 7.8 below what was estimated. Or what was actually eventually appropriated. And it doesn't mean that it was the entire transfer that didn't come over the 7.8 reduction. There could have been reductions in other IDs. It's just the total amount of funding between the existing funding at the time and what was estimated for the transfer at the time and what was requested and what ultimately came over was about 7.8 short.
Oh, thank you for that information. Representative Howard brought up the messenger program, and as far as I know, I didn't hear the answer because I was back and forth between a couple places. But I know New York has a massive program that they do, in Nassau and Essex County, I believe. I didn't know a lot about Connecticut when I looked into this probably in the middle of last year. So that would be something I would definitely be interested in finding about to just basically more information about it. And then maybe work with Greg in regards to trying to build something else in regards to that. So if you can send some information about that, it would be.
We'd be happy to do that. Happy to meet with you as well, Representative Nolan.
Okay. And you know, and since Greg makes more money than me, he'll probably have to do the gas on that trip too. And as far as mental health collaborative programs, thank you for that information. That's important to know, to be able to share. I would definitely like to see that put into some kind of social network post that we can put out there and share. And I don't know if you have the.
We can do that. As a matter of fact, I think we've got a synopsized explanation of what the pilot is. I don't know if you know Dr. Mike Norco from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. We've worked closely with him over the years. Number one, I think I mentioned before the full committee, we instituted a program where we stopped doing competency evaluations in a courtroom. We're now doing it all from DEMIS. It's just so much easier, primarily for the impacted individual who is being evaluated. You know, the stress of getting in a transport van, coming from Whiting or from CVH and going to a court and sitting in the lockup. You know, you've got mental health issues. You're sitting in a lockup waiting for your case to be called. It's very stressful, and it probably creates an unreliable environment for the testimony for a judge to evaluate whether somebody's competent to stand trial. So we do them all now in a much more dignified and humane way. And it was Dr. Norco who asked that we try to put together a program to divert the individuals whom we've previously identified. And you, as municipal police officers, know you have individuals in your communities who suffer, they're poor souls who suffer from mental health challenges, and they are constantly being arrested for low-level offenses, sometimes simply to get them out of the cold and into a warm environment where they can get a good meal. You know, that's not a real effective way to use law enforcement. So what Dr. Norco has proposed and what we are wholeheartedly in support of is a diversionary program where we can identify these individuals, and rather than bringing them into the court, let's divert them into treatment track as quickly as possible. It's not unlike what we're doing in the juvenile justice realm, where we believe that as much harm can be done from even putting a juvenile into the courtroom as good that can come from doing so. Let's divert them out of the courtroom. Let's divert them into the treatment and support systems that they need for us to truly at least attempt to make an effort to have a positive impact.
And I appreciate that answer, because mental health is a huge issue for me in the ways that we as officers, one, have to deal with it, and sometimes there's no alternative for us other than to place them in custody for their safety. But at the same time, we understand that that really does nothing for them. it just
Right.
hinders the opportunity for them to be able to get the correct help. I'd really be interested in seeing any kind of documentation and or what your policy is on mental health. If you can send any information
Sure.
to the committee so that they can, so everybody can see it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, because that is something that I'm going to try and move on, that we make sure that we get a shift in how law enforcement deals with mental health versus how they should be dealt with. That's very important to me.
It's interesting to know, Representative Noel, it's also part of a national initiative of the Council of Chief Justices and the Conference of State Court Administrators. We recognize that the criminal justice system should not be a mental health treatment provider. Doesn't work well.
Yeah, and that falls into the multitude of acts that police wear that they shouldn't wear. So, and the same, I'm sure, goes through other areas of judicial, but I know it's a real strenuous issue for police departments and our community that believes also that police should be the police and not the mental health worker.
Right, right.
So,
yep.
Thank you, Mr.
Agreed.
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we've arrived at our time to conclude. Any other questions? Seeing none, Judge Carroll, thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you to your staff as well for your time and dedication.
I thank all members of the committee for their courtesy. And Representative Candelaria, the Marshall graduation is scheduled for 1:30 this afternoon at Woodlawn Street. You're welcome to join us and tell the Marshals what you're doing to keep them with us.
Thank you. No, thank you. And definitely we're going to do whatever we can in our end to ensure
I appreciate it.
that issue. So thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a good day.
Take care. Bye now.
Thank you.